This is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History for, have your notes out? Thursday, the 21st of October, 2021. Last time we were here, we talked about the advances of the Neolithic, which center on the domestication of plants, which is discovering what seeds are good for, which leads to, at first, plantings along the nomadic route, and then a transformation of life from that of Paleolithic, nomadic hunter-gatherers to Neolithic, sedentary farmers. From old Stone Age wandering tribes where men hunt and women gather, to new Stone Age farmers who stay in one place, put all their eggs in the basket of their field, and then watch that field closely and assiduously work it. This transformation of life changes everything, as you might imagine. Having a permanent abode is a kind of a big deal. But it also provides us with, aside from bees and ants, the world's first reliable food surplus. And with that reliable food surplus comes grains and vegetables beyond what people desperately, absolutely need for their daily survival. So old people can be kept on because there's extra food. Not much, but enough. So that they don't have to just go off and walk to the sea. Injured people can be tended to without leaving them behind because the tribe can't afford to keep them. But we also have the beginnings of what is called specialized labor. Instead of there being a mere two jobs for human beings, hunters for men, gatherers for women, you now have the ability to feed specialists, like kings who rule, priests who lead in prayer and who remind people of what they have in common, warriors who courageously and strongly protect, judges and lawyers who practice the law, craftsmen like carpenters and blacksmiths who make those things that make life possible in a civilized way. We have domesticated animals as well. Livestock animals like cows, pigs, sheep, goats, and working animals like dogs and cats. So with all of this, you now have an entirely new way of life. And what we are beginning to understand is a lifestyle that will last from around 10,000 years before Christ until about 200 years ago. 10,000 years before Christ until about 200 years ago. And that's 200 years ago in the most advanced developed parts of the world, England, Western Europe, and so forth, the eastern United States. There are still places around the world that have a few Paleolithic hunter-gatherers. We talked about them, the cargo cult. And there are still a few places around the world that have an agrarian society, a society based on farming, like we developed 10,000 years ago and retain up until the time of the early 1800s, to the time of Napoleon, at least. So let's talk about, first of all, because one of the things historians do is they explore what changes and what doesn't change from time to time. Let's look at something that doesn't change. Our human nature is the same from Grodd the caveman to Captain Kirk the spaceman. We have the same drives. We have the same passions. We have the same instincts. We have the same dark side and light side. Within us are the capacities of devils and of angels and of everything in between. We, as human beings, are complex. As such, Those who believe in this thing called progress, yes, do put it on my desk, are going to be frustrated because genuine progress requires that a person's nature can change. Star Trek, which posits some future socialism, welcome. Do make sure your notes are out. Star Trek assumes that by the 23rd century, which is about 250 years from now when they are, that human nature will have been stripped of its greed, of its pettiness, and that we will live in some ideal future without money, where everything is according to your, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs, which was a slogan coined by Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, the first communist dictator of the Soviet Union, bloodstained tyrant if there ever was one. But it's so idealistic. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. In fact, every communist is a utopian who believes that human nature can be changed, pruned like a topiary, or like a bonsai tree, if you know what I'm talking about. That you can, through operant conditioning, that's a psychological term, which basically means the carrot and the stick, change people's hearts and minds. You're good. Here, have some extra food. You're good. Have some rewards. Oh, here, let me scratch you behind the ears. You're such a good boy. You're such a good girl. Bad! Bad boy! Bad girl! No, no, no! Let me take a newspaper, whap you on the nose. Don't go to the bathroom in the house, except in the proper spots. Operant conditioning, the carrot and the stick. And what communists and socialists and other utopians of that ilk offer us is programming. They offer us a society that forces people to be good by punishing anything that they deem not good. That's why, in 100 years, communism has produced no utopia, no better life. On the other hand, it always produces a lower living standard and body bags, and lots of them. Over 100 million civilians were murdered by their own communist governments in peacetime within the last 100 years, 104 years since 1917 when the commies took over Russia. But we want a better world, one way or the other.
Doesn't the ideal communist agenda requires humans to be stripped of greediness and even passion?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a part of human nature, right? Learn from your mistakes.
Communism makes total sense if you're an ant or a bee, if you are designed to be a drone, if you're designed to be a part of a giant collective, then it makes total sense. I was born to be a drone. I will harvest honey, whatever. But we're not like that. Unless you are handicapped in some way, either because of injury or because of birth defects. You and I are sentient. We're self-aware. We have minds of our own. And we make judgments. Our free republic was established originally. Its ancestor was the Puritans, who came here to find the best way to worship God without a government telling you, worship God this way. If you're a believer, the best use of that freedom is to find the truth and to then serve that truth. Dedicate yourself to fighting for it, to advocating it, to standing up against what's wrong and standing up for what's right. And I can't tell you what the truth is. I can tell you what I think. I can tell you what people in the past have tended to think. But I can't tell you what to think. I wouldn't if I could. Our nature is to be cantankerous, independently minded individuals. When we come together in groups, it's usually for some form of mutual benefit. But when somebody believes that the group has the right to control things about you as an individual that it can't do without reaching into your mind and switching your wiring, then we have problems. So I would suggest that history indicates that the same drives that caused the Athenian democracy to rise and fall and the Roman Republic to rise and fall are still present today. That the same pettiness that caused the Athenians to to sentence Socrates to death, or the Sanhedrin to sentence Jesus of Nazareth to death, is still among us. And to play as if it's not, or as if you can make all that darkness in us go away, or light in us go away, because it's for the common good, usually, up until now, it has always led to oppression and tyranny. Always. So, there's that. I am going to contend in this course, and it's a judgment, it's an opinion, you can disagree with it without any penalty, that we have an unchanging human nature. Our clothing changes, our hygiene changes, thank God. Our technology changes, our customs change, our manners change, our languages change, our religion even changes. But we're not fundamentally different from the first people to develop farms, from the early savages that used fire. And if we go into space, unless we decide to play God with genetic engineering, which we might do, the people out in space are not going to be fundamentally different from us. I'm sure somewhere in the world today there are transhuman advocates who want to see scientists breed a superior human being to replace us. The best genes, Einstein genes, the rock gene. So you combine Einstein's mind with the rock's physique, and you get some kind of genetic Superman. Are they going to be nice to us? Or are they going to view us as something like animals, like cattle, to be ruled? Humanity is ubiquitous, and humanity is our nature, writ large in history, writ small in our individual choices. You know what that means? That means that the human condition is subject to something called evil. We do not live in a world where everyone is nice. We do not live in a world where everything works out. We do not live in a world where everyone's good intentions are good. We just don't. There are people who enjoy oppression. There are people who would burn the world to ash if they could be assured of ruling the ash pile. There are people who like to make others suffer because it pleases them on some basic level. And they're around us, and they're free. And some of them are brilliant. That introduces the most dangerous creature in the universe that we know about. A brilliant sociopath. A human being who hates people, who doesn't really think that other people are genuinely real, and who's smart enough to manipulate their lives into power. Many of the so-called most significant people in history, unquote, are brilliant sociopaths. Are people who hate humanity but have the ability to rule it. And they end up taking over the structures of society and therefore taking over the society. And turning the other people around them into slaves. They get to play God until they die. This is one reason I don't think immortality is a good idea for us. Because if it was, Hitler would still probably be alive. Stalin, Mao, they'd both be alive. If it's just a question of replacing your organs, you just take a bunch of peasants, people like us, and bring them in and swap out their organs, so that you end up you're 100 years old, but you've got a 20-year-old kidney, you got a 30-year-old heart. We don't have the ability to do that yet. I hope we never will. There's also technology. I have this crazy notion that free speech applies to racists as well as people who are tolerant. That free speech applies to sexists as well as to feminists. That free speech means speech for morons, idiots, and jerks. I have this strange idea that free speech allows people to say who they are. And I would rather know if the guy next to me thinks that all Jews are Christ-killing scum who are trying to rule the world. I can take into account, therefore, that he's an anti-Semite. And I won't necessarily believe him easily when he asserts anything, because he's an anti-Semite. And I don't trust anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is one of the oldest forms of race hatred that we have, because the Jews are such an ancient people. But now, instead of speaking through words to crowds of people on the town square, or instead of writing books or articles for a limited number of magazines or for a limited number of newspapers or getting interviewed on a limited number of television or radio stations, we now have an internet, which 20 years ago was so free. And on that internet 20 years ago, I remember, because I got excited about it, I'm not usually excited by technology, but I didn't need a publisher. I could just write things and spread them out there, and people who wanted to find my work could. And I could speak, and I started a YouTube channel and all this other stuff. And then, around the time President Trump got elected, the tech companies, who are all headed by very left-wing people, liberals, progressives, Democrats, social democrats, and so forth, they decided that Trump could not have been elected without misinformation. So tech companies began to censor people. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so forth. And not only did they censor them by saying, no, you can't express a racist idea here. Well, what's racist? What we think is racist is racist. But they also set up a group of people called fact checkers. Now, this is like something out of George Orwell's 1984. Google is going to tell me what is true from what is false. Right. Facebook is going to tell me what's a real fact from a false, fake, phony fact. Lots of F words there. I've got some F words. Totally different. The point is that today, the internet is no free speech zone. A former president of the United States, like him or not, was banned because the tech lords did not think that what he said was conducive to their message. So consequently, he's starting his own tech company. And I hope it succeeds, and I intend to patronize it. We don't have free speech on the internet now. More and more, the Chinese Communist Party's sensibilities are shaping what movies Hollywood can make. Back in the day when the Soviet Union was a threat to the United States, we had movies every year come out about the dangers of communism, about what life was like behind the Iron Curtain, about how communists treated their own people. Have you seen anything, even mildly criticizing the Communist Party of China in any popular culture? In the last few years? I haven't. And I've been looking. Because Disney wants to sell movie tickets in China. So Disney self-censors. There's even a South Park episode about it called Made in China. Human nature includes the capacity for evil. Evil exists around us. I know, I've met evil people. Not because they disagree with me, There are some people who agree with me that disturb the hell out of me, and there are people who disagree with me who are wonderful people. It has nothing to do with that. This is the great lie that a lot of people on the left say. They assume that anyone who's disagreeing with them is a racist, sexist, homophobe. Some people on the right think anyone who disagrees with them is a communist. None of those things are true. No, when I say I've met an evil person, I mean I've met a person, actually a few people, about a handful of people in 55 years, who have neither conscience nor mercy about them, who are predators, and you can tell. Because every instinct in my body went, bing! Watch out. Do not ever, ever turn your back on this person. Because they'll hurt you. If you are in the presence of genuine capital E satanic evil, you will know it. Your body will tell you. Your subconscious will tell you. Now, what you do with that information is up to you. People are famous for, oh, it's just a feeling. You must be imagining things. Yes, I'll get in the car with you, stranger. You've got puppies. Don't ignore your own instinct. It could be one of the last decisions you make. One of the problems that all people in all ages have to face is presuming that our nature is what it is and presuming that therefore evil exists. How do we live in a world where people would happily take our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor, and despoil it just for fun? How do we protect ourselves from danger? Not just tidal waves and earthquakes, but people who would enslave us or people who would harm us because it suits them to. So one of the jobs of any human society is to figure out a way to protect itself. I, Ralph K. Genorio, do solemnly swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign or domestic, so help me God. That's sort of, and I'd have my hand on a Bible, that's sort of an oath sworn by every soldier, sailor, airman, marine, coastie, and every elected politician and judges in the United States. That oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign or domestic, matters. The job of people in our government is to preserve the fundamental law that makes us free. It's not to an individual president. It's not to a political party. It's not even to the office of president or to the federal government. It's to the Constitution. Because our Constitution is a way of looking at life and at people that gives the maximum amount of freedom to the most people in the most circumstances. It's not total freedom. You don't have the freedom to murder me. I don't have the freedom to imprison you just because we feel like it. So the Constitution is the means by which we preserve a society with good people, with evil people, and with freedom, but still some degree of law and order.
So, quick question. It's slightly off topic, but when you swear on a Bible, because we are in America, we have religious freedom. What if you don't believe in the God or in the Bible? Do you still swear on it because it's like tradition?
Some people do. There are one or two Islamic representatives in the U.S. Congress who've sworn on Qurans.
Okay.
If you're an atheist, I don't know. You could swear on Darwin's Origin of Species. I don't know. But we have religious freedom, but we're also a Judeo-Christian society, or we have been. What that means is not that we're religiously completely neutral. It means that we have Judeo-Christian traditions, but we're open to other traditions so long as they're not completely criminal. Like, my religion says I have to have human sacrifice while I take all the drugs in the world. No, you're not going to be allowed to do that. Either of those things, I hope. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. In any case, just understand that the human condition is a struggle. It's a struggle to survive, but it's also a struggle against evil. Now, where does evil exist? Well, it exists in me, and it exists in you. That's the first place. Inside each of us are drives that are completely nasty and dangerous. If you give any of us total power, godlike power, Superman-like power, we'd be destroyed by it. One of the things that keeps us in line, that keeps us from exercising or acting on every dark impulse that we have, is that we know that our survival depends upon behaving. That if we don't behave in a certain way, society will protect itself from us. And torches and pitchforks will come and we'll die. But if we suddenly had magic powers and nobody else did, or superpowers and nobody else did, or total power for political or monetary cause, there's no need to fear what other people think. And if your thing is to juggle babies with bayonets and play catch with them, you'll find a way to make it happen. Jeffrey Epstein, who did not kill himself in prison, was killed because there were wealthy and powerful people who used him to provide underage sex partners. A lot. And therefore he had dirt on them. And therefore he had to die.
I also think that they could have gotten him out of the prison and it actually wasn't his body. But have you heard about John Mcafee?
No.
Oh man, you should look into John Mcafee.
Can you summarize it quickly?
So he donated all new computers to the CIA and the FBI, but he had spyware on them.
And they took them?
Yeah, he created...
What kind of moron says, oh, free stuff, when they're the secret freaking service?
Yeah, he's the guy who made Mcafee antivirus, so he's...
Oh, him. He's evil. I used Mcafee 20 years ago. I hate that thing. It took me forever to get it off my computer. Okay, so he donates computers to the CIA and FBI, but of course he has backdoors and spyware.
Yeah, he was monitoring all their traffic, and he found out, I don't remember their specific titles within the government, but basically the person in our government who's like in charge of immigration is the largest human trafficker in the Americas, and the person who's in charge of controlling drugs is the largest drug trafficker.
I hope that what you just said, with all sincere respect, is an urban legend. But I don't know, because I haven't looked into it. What I can say is, just as a matter of course, if any U.S. government agency, even the Department of Health and Human Services, takes gifts like that, the people who accept those gifts should be jailed for incompetence and treason. Golly, golgol.
And then he also said that he would not kill himself. He got a tattoo about it that said whacked.
Yeah.
And then killed himself.
Oops.
Yeah.
Guess he changed his mind.
Yeah, he shot himself twice in the back of the head.
Understood. Yeah. No. Look, it's like the guy who killed Hitler must have been a hero.
Yeah.
It was Hitler. I am not a conspiracy theory guy. I really aren't. And I've told you because I don't believe people are that smart. But I do believe that in a society that has institutions that amplify individual power or government power, that everyday people tend to become prey. I'm not a Marxist. I don't believe in class warfare. But I do believe in a society that's increasingly dependent upon technology, that technology experts and owners of technology can enslave other people with those very machines that they come to depend upon. And that's a risk. And that's something the American government has not dealt with. We still treat tech companies like they're just starting out. They get tax breaks and all sorts of anti-monopoly exceptions because we got to have high tech. Yeah, well, we do. But we don't need the government. And I could go on. One of the things that we have to contend with in society is how do we deal with evil? Part of the evil is inside of us. And we learn to control that, hopefully. Now, who teaches us? Families, churches, parents, and even schools, to an extent. There's a second kind of evil, and that's the evil among us, the evil within our personal relationships. You've got a friend who decides that addictive drugs are the bestest thing ever, and they decide that they're going to devote their life to acquiring and using these drugs. I know I've had it happen to a couple of friends of mine. It sounds silly, but it happens. And the question is, what do you do about it? Do you just ignore it because you don't want to disrupt the friendship or rock the boat? Or do you try to have a heart-to-heart with them at some point and say, look, you've got to make your own choices in life, but I'm telling you, I'm not going to be around for it. What you're doing is dangerous and harmful to yourself and to anyone who looks at you as a possible role model. Stop it. Get control of it, because right now you are the slave of it, as far as I can see. And basically what I was saying to this person is we're not going to be friends anymore. Because I've got to have it, it's cool, I feel alive. If you don't have it, you're on the other side. Which is lyrics from a song about addiction. They didn't want to hear it. And I knew they didn't want to hear it. But I had to do something. They continued to be an addict until they died, young and foolishly. What do we do about the evil in us? We try to control it. What do we do about the evil within our relationships? That's an important question. And that's the kind of question that will define you. Do you allow evil to happen without anyone doing anything? One of the most horrible things that ever happened in the United States happened in the Bronx within a year and a half of my birth. In the mid-1960s, a woman named Kitty Genovese was coming home late at night in the summertime. Now, in the mid-1960s Bronx, nobody had air conditioning. I mean, practically no one. And New York City swelters in the summer heat. So every window was open. Now, as she was approaching her home building was shaped like sort of a squared off U. You go in through the open end of the U through a courtyard, and then there's a door, and you've got apartments going up many, many floors on three sides. A rapist was waiting. For hours, he raped this woman. She screamed. He then killed her. For hours. Hundreds of apartments were right there with open windows. No one stopped. No one went down. No one said, get away from that woman. No one said, I've called the police. They did nothing. And when the police went around afterwards to take statements, nobody heard anything. In Portland, Maine, in the early 1990s, when my wife and I moved there, in morning rush hour, at a very busy spot, a woman had been grabbed by a rapist, and she was dragged across 6 lanes of traffic on 2 streets to a park called the Deering Oaks. Hundreds of people saw her, and at this point, there were cell phones. We're talking, I think, 1994. There were cell phones. People could, maybe you don't get out of the car. Get away from her! But maybe you take out your damn cell phone and call 911 or whatever. No one did that. No one rolled down their window and said, get away from her. No one got out of their car. No one pulled a gun. No one called the police. Now, my mom was a police detective for 25 years in Wallingford, Connecticut, from the mid-70s to the late 90s. And I have 2 younger sisters that are twins. They're fraternal twins. And this is something she drilled into them. And I'm telling it to you as she told it to them. Especially you young women, but this is true for men too. If somebody pulls a weapon on you and tells you to go somewhere secluded, don't do it. Fight. You may die, but you'll die clean and you'll die quick. If you let them take you somewhere secluded, they can work their will on you for hours, days, weeks. They can capture you and throw you in a basement. You have no control. To her daughters, who my mother loves without question, without limit. She told them to fight, scream, run. Do not let yourself be taken to a secluded place. Yes?
I've read that statistically, you're more likely to survive being shot by the gun than you are to survive going to a second location.
Indeed. And that's true. It's like if you're ever at a college party, don't ever put your drink down and then pick it up and drink from it. Somebody may have slipped you a Mickey. They may have slipped drugs into the drink, roofies or something. Who knows? You don't know. So never, ever do that. Never, ever let yourself get taken somewhere secluded or quiet. You do with that what you will. But to me, the fact that there are evil rapists and murderers out there is not nearly as horrifying as those moral cripples, those cowards in the Bronx and in Portland, Maine, who in both cases stood by and did nothing when evil was done in front of them. I'm not a hero. I've been in a few life and death situations. I've been in a few situations where I've put myself at risk because I thought it was the right thing to do. It never feels good, except afterwards if you make it. And then it's sort of adrenaline rush. Society has to deal with our nature. Human beings have to deal with the human condition. So there's evil inside of us that we have to control. There's evil in our midst, in our personal relationships. And then there's evil out there in the wider world. North Korea, Chinese Communist Party, the Iranian government, the Taliban, who are engaged in trying to conquer the world for some kind of evil. Now, I am going to have a sort of generalized picture about how American politics deals with these different kinds of evil. Neither liberals or conservatives focus as much as they should on the evil inside of each of us, because that's not an easy message to sell. You've got to be nice. You've got to be good. You've got to be good for goodness sake. That's true, I think. But not everyone is willing to listen to that. Here's what conservatives are good at. Conservatives are good at pointing out the evil outside in the world that wants to destroy us and our way of life. So conservatives tend to be willing to have a strong military and to get involved overseas in order to stop foreign dictators from expanding their power to the point where the United States is going to become under a dictator's influence. Liberals tend to forgive a lot of things that happen overseas. President Biden actually once said that the way the Chinese Communist Party is treating the Uyghurs of Xinjiang is a cultural difference between Westerners and Easterners. And what Biden just said is that genocide is a Chinese cultural characteristic that we should just accept. Genocide, the intentional murder of an entire race of people, which is what's going on in northwestern China under the Communist Party. Look into it. It's horrifying. Now, so conservatives are good at fighting foreign evil. Liberals tend to forgive it because they're busy with other things. Now we come to the reverse side of the coin. Evil within our midst. Without progressives, liberals, and that sort of idealism, we'd probably still have Jim Crow laws. Without liberals and progressives and that sort of idealism, we might still have slavery. We might still make it impossible for an ambitious woman to do something other than what is traditional. We might still throw people in jail for being homosexuals. You know me enough to know that I am not a woke social justice warrior. But I admit, progressives and liberals are better at spotting the evil within our society than conservatives are. Conservatives tend to rally around the flag and say, my country, love it or leave it. I've said it. But we're wrong. Evil is evil. Whether it's the kind of evil that happens in North Korea or the kind of evil that happens in Minneapolis. Conservatives tend to forgive evil within our midst, whereas liberals tend to focus on it. That's why I think we need people of all different types of belief. The liberals will keep us honest about our own feet of clay. They'll point out where we fail to live up to our ideals. And that's an important and necessary social function. Conservatives will keep us aware that we need to protect ourselves in a dangerous world where most countries are led by the most aggressive predators in all the land. Without conservatives, we fall prey to foreign influence that is not good. Without liberals, we don't change or even try to change those things in our society that are less than perfect. So, all of this in a backdrop of struggling to survive, because there's never enough food, there's never enough clothing, there's never enough housing. There are always poor people, and that's also part of the human condition. And we're also mortal. So whatever we do, you can eat greens and be a vegan and run every day, you're still going to die. It's just a question of when and how. And the truth is, there's no guarantee. Winston Churchill, who was much bigger and fatter than I am, used to drink booze with every meal, smoke cigars like a chimney, and ate without any restraint. And he said, I have been the pallbearer at many vegetable juice drinkers' funerals. And it's true. Living right doesn't necessarily prolong your life. It probably will, but it doesn't necessarily. So the human condition is dealing with a world that's complicated, that's risky, where we have to struggle to survive, where we have to struggle against evil within ourselves, within our relationships, and out in the wider world. And where we have to remember that if you push people, any society, this is a quote from somebody who I don't remember, any society is a few hungry days away from anarchy. You put people in a place where they don't have food for 2 or 3 days, and they're going to riot. And it won't be pretty. The mob that will form will be a violent, murderous thing. I know this because I've studied history, and that's what always happens when populations starve. It's not just the starvation, it's the rioting that kills a lot of people. So, these are all presuppositions of my course. This is how I see the world. I see that there's great good in us, but there's great evil. I think that life is about struggle, and societies have to deal with all of these things. There are people who teach, and there are people who are students who say, what a dark view. Boy, you must be a terrible person, because you, Mr. Tenorio, are denying the possibility that we can grow and change and become better. No, I'm not. I know that people can grow and change and become better. I've done it. But I will clarify. I know that individual people can grow and change and become better. I have a relative who's an alcoholic. She drank and drank and drank until she hit rock bottom and realized that she wanted to die. Not only that she was going to die if she kept doing this, that she wanted to because her life had become not worth living. And in that moment, she found the courage to fight and change. And if you're addicted to a chemical, it's hard to change your ways. When all you have to do is go down to the local liquor store and buy whatever poison you want. My thing was road rage and anger. I got angry. As a young man, I got really angry at things. And I was a dangerous driver. When I was also from New York and Connecticut, and I drove through Massachusetts a lot. And I'm telling you, in those places, people are trying to kill you. It's not like they're driving as if they don't care about killing you. In Connecticut, they actually were trying to kill you, at least some of them. And so I was of that culture. And when I moved to Maine, it wasn't appropriate. Mainers were much more like Idahoans, much more decent and calm and kind, and I had to change that about myself. And when you get used to rage, it's a part of your life. It's hard to give up. I've tried. some degree of success. Individuals can change. Individuals can decide, whoa, my life's a toilet because I've made choices that have led me into the bathroom. I'd better do something about that. And then you fight for your life. You fight against the bad patterns that you've allowed to develop or that you've built. What I don't believe in at all is collective salvation. I don't believe that you can save other people if they don't want to be saved. I don't believe that you can save groups of people. I don't believe that you can end poverty by raising the poor up through government programs. I don't believe that you can end crime by having prisons be rehabilitation centers. I think they should be work camps. I think they should be unpleasant places where a lot of the sexual assaults that happen shouldn't happen because people should have been too tired after digging ditches all day. I believe prisons are places there where punishment should happen. I'm very old-fashioned in this regard, so retrograde. Because I don't believe that you can reach into another person's mind and make them right. A, you don't necessarily know what's right for them. B, without their cooperation, all you're doing is pressuring them. It's like a person who gets involved in a relationship, a romantic relationship with someone. Oh, I love him, but I'm going to change him. I'm going to make him a better man. Or I'm going to make her a better woman. Although, truth to tell, this is more of a feminine vice than a male one. Yeah, I'm dating Bluto, and he's sort of a pig, but, the potential in him. I'm just going to work my will on him. I'm going to civilize him. There is a degree of vanity in that you can fix your lover, that you can fix your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your husband or whatever. And it's an arrogant, nasty, manipulative thing to do. If you don't love the guy, don't marry him. Don't date him. Don't assume that you have the right and duty to change him against his will. Because you may stay married, but it won't be pleasant. I've seen that play out too, where husband and wife have one thing that they do together, which is argue. And their arguments are epic. Not a pretty thing. So, can society save us from our human nature? I don't think so. But we can save ourselves. And if we are interested in saving ourselves, we can then go to society or go to friends or go to family and say, help me. I need your help. And then you can help. But the decisive thing is not you, it is them, it is the person who needs to change, who has to want to change. And the moment they stop wanting to change, it doesn't work. So what does this mean about social progress? It means that I am a denier or a doubter. I think social progress can happen, but that doesn't happen by making people better, by stripping them of their greed. You can have a society make life better by being prosperous, orderly, fair. If a society is prosperous, there's enough material goods for anyone who wants to work to get them. It has to be orderly so that you can go about your business without worrying about somebody sticking a knife in your back or assaulting you or whatever. And it has to be fair. Human beings know when something's fair, and they know when something's not. Oh, God, when I was a kid, I had a nephew. Nice guy now, but obnoxious twit then. And whenever we got together for family gatherings, boom! Ralph, stop hitting your nephew! Or, both of you, stop it! And it's like, I've been putting up with this nonsense for the last 45 minutes, and I've held my patience. You're saying I'm the same as him because I'm responding to his BS? Yeah, because I don't want to hear it. Not that that's ever happened to anyone else in any other family. To equate the person defending themselves with the person attacking them, that's unfair. It's just fundamentally unfair, and it drives me crazy. And that's something else. Life isn't fair. You've got to find a way to function, even though you're never going to get perfect justice. Anyway, I've gone on and on about this for an entire class period because it's so easy to just assume that just like we used to use fire, and then we used coal, wood fire, and then we used coal, and then we used oil, and now we use nuclear power, that you can have people that are violent and greedy and crude, and as our technology gets better, somehow we're going to become more angelic. That's the Star Trek vision. You may want to think about that. Come to your own conclusion. If you believe that progress like that is possible, good for you. But think about it. Don't just accept it because the technology looks better or the clothing looks cooler or they're in space. They have phasers. I love Star Trek, the original Star Trek, but it's a vision that has some fundamental flaws because on a basic level it assumes that good people can change humanity, that they can assert and impose upon humanity their belief system. And that's not necessarily the way things work. Any thoughts, comments, or questions before we're done? Yeah.
Kind of a comment.
Please.
If everyone has the same opinion and think the same way as you do, then no one's going to grow. It's
Right.
Gonna flatline, and progress is going to flatline.
Stagnation.
And so, like, cancel culture and just on both sides of the extreme.
All totalitarians want conformity above all. And that conformity is death for the mind. You're absolutely right. Have a good day, folks. Thank you for your participation.